I'm going to call this September 20th, 2018 meeting of the AMATS committee to order. It is 1:31. Do a roll call. Peter? Peter, the mayor? Here. So you have a forum. Okay, Craig, would you please read the public information announcement?
Sure. All AMATS meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation first by staff or a consultant. At that time, the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Okay, we have a 3-minute limit on comments to the public. Okay, do we have an approved agenda?
Motion. Second.
Okay, any changes?
Hey.
Okay, are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Okay, the agenda is approved. We have before the meeting of August 23rd, 2018 for approval. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes for the audit.
Second. Any changes or discussion? The one thing I would mention is we did have a request for staff to provide a to-do list when we had items that were assigned to folks. So I realize it'll take a little while to get that in, but I just wanted to make that comment. So, okay, any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the August 23rd minutes are approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5A, the 2019-2022 AMATS Transportation Improvement Program Public Hearing Draft. Just before we get started here, as a note on this, I requested that these be sorted into 3 different groups. The first group are comments, which I believe are no action, which are reading. The next 50 are comments regarding UNED, those are in blue. And then there are 15 other items which we need to look at, which are yellow for a total of, I believe, 95 50 comments. Okay, Craig?
Sir, we have 3 main plans or documents that we need to do as a Metropolitan planning organization. We have our work program, which is what staff does at a 2-year cycle. We have our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our 20-year plan that looks at all of the possible surface transportation improvements we do in the AMATS area for the next couple of years, regardless of source of funds, whether it's federal funds, state funds, municipal bonds, etc. We want to recognize that.
We're on 5A,
And so that's the 20-year plan. And then the third one is the one that's before us today, which is the TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program. That's the 4-year program of projects, whereas the Metropolitan Transportation Plan talks about all sources of possible funds, and we have to, for lack of a better term, we have to pass the smile test of how many dollars we might get over the next 20 years. The tip that's before us today, we have the exact dollar figures that we get in our allocation. They are in here, and we have to program that to the dollar. So it's only federal funds, and it is the exact dollar figures that we're going to use for that. It's a long process to update the tip. We are required to do that every 4 years. And so where we're at today, we have gone through and we've updated our criteria. Send out a call for nominations, we ranked and scored projects, we put a public review draft out for asking for public comments. And so we then have taken those comments and put them into the technical advisory committee and our city advisory committee. And we are now before you today with having gone through the technical advisory committee and having their suggestions and thoughts on all the comments. And we're asking you today to adjudicate these comments and hopefully release a public review draft. The public review draft is what we would use to go to the Anchorage Assembly. Operating agreement requires that we take our tip through the Anchorage Assembly for their recommendation before it comes to us. The policy committee is the decision maker, they're the final arbiter. But we get advice along the way from our Citizens Advisory Committee, from our Freight and Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, from our Technical Advisory Committee, and from the Anchorage Assembly. So what you could say. We can start on this, or we want to do that.
Sure. So, John, and for anyone else who walked in, I know that ladies and opening, I've asked that these be divided into 3 different groups. First ones are the comments, which are in green. Second group are 50 that have to do with UMAD. And then there's 15 that are in yellow, that are something to look at too, and then for total. So, I believe, and the expectation is hopefully everybody's read all these. I believe the 30 comments, and the technical advisories respond to my hopefully those will be fairly straightforward. Again, I'm hoping we can discuss the UMAD project, and then there's the other 15 which have various recommendations and whatnot, updates and studies and whatnot for those. So that works for folks. And are there any from the committee? I guess what I thought, and I don't have Cindy here to kind of help me with parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, but I guess what I thought we might do is go through these in groups, and then the committee can comment on these, and then we would have public comment on, like, for instance, the comments. And then we can go through the UMAD, do those, have comments here, and then go, because otherwise we'll be talking about 14 different things, trying to do the same thing. We have folks here talk about them, and folks out there, I think it's going to get a little confusing. So if that's okay, what I'd like to do is first go through the comments. Does anybody have any objections to accepting all the comments as written and proposed here, and the recommendations from the technical advisory committee that there's no actions needed on these comments?
So just the green section.
Sorry?
Just the green section.
So that is, yeah, they're not ordered. The numbers are different because we reordered them, but we didn't. Somebody on staff did, and somebody reordered them to put them in the color code and the order that we have these and send them to John.
At the TAC, we had some of these in yellow. Were they in the yellow here?
So the yellow ones are still in yellow. Those are ones that staff felt a decision point had to be made by either the technical or policy committee. And those got, those are, they're either on the yellow here or the back, so.
So right now, we're looking at the ones that are comments, and the TAC has reviewed those and said response was no action needed, and those are all the ones that are in green.
I could, just for example, because I have the printout from the TAC. So, for example, and this is just randomly chosen, not with any meaning, number 6 on what we got at the TAC, where was that?
Is that the one from?
It's in yellow.
It's not yellow,
The
no.
second one in yellow.
It's not yellow, it's just the white one. I just wanted.
Well, it's the
And this
second
one
one
is
in
the
yellow.
second one in yellow.
Oh, it is, okay, so,
That's one we need to look
okay,
at.
and that's on there because staff recommends remove this project, but there's no, and then, so we're gonna say.
Well, the TAC can concur with that. It's just, it's significant if we're either adding or taking out a project, and we want to make sure the policy
Okay.
committee makes that decision.
All right, so to go over again, I think the ones in green don't require any action. I believe.
The majority of them are just comments.
Right.
This is great, whatever.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure that
No, no,
we did it
right.
for discussion.
Yeah, so what was posted, the information is identical to what's in here. The only difference is, for ease of understanding what we're asking the policy committee to do, we put them in the color coded them, so it makes a little more sense. But the information is the same.
Good to have done that.
Sure.
Would have been better if I had read it.
I don't say that, John.
Yeah, but I read it at the time, so I have all the information. on the
Okay.
company. I just didn't come color coded. Okay, so you want a motion that we're okay?
Well, I'd like to have, go ahead.
Sorry. Procedure would be, you guys can talk about whichever one you want, and then the public has an opportunity to talk about it.
That's what I wanted to say, and then we can, right, and under this, we can accept all of these as in agreement, and then we'll go on to the UMAD. That way, we don't get things hopefully balled up and discussing 14 different things. Okay, so there any discussion on the items in green, which are, I believe, I've read over them, I don't believe there's action on any of them. We need to accept that. comments from the public on the items which are in green on the spreadsheet, which again are usually just comments, no action required. Yes, sir.
I have a
Can you
comment
identify yourself,
on,
please?
yeah, sorry, my name's Pierce with Bike Anchorage. I have a comment on the comments in general. Does that qualify for this section? Okay, great. So partly my mistake, but Craig and I have been kind of emailing back and forth just before this. I should have Craig's email memorized by now, but the first email that was sent soliciting comments on the draft list had Craig's email misspelled. And so the Bike Anchorage comments were submitted on time, August 20th, but were not included in the comment response section. And the reason I feel it's important to stand up and say that is Bike Anchorage took a lot of time to put these comments together, and we feel they're important to include. So I wanted to ask if it's possible to add on staff response to this list prior to the policy committee accepting the existing comments.
So what happened? I mean, did those never got?
Yeah, I don't think staff ever received them.
We didn't get it.
Didn't get, and we still haven't gotten them. Is that true?
No, I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I have no idea what they are, so it's hard for me to,
Right.
hopefully there'll be things that are.
it's overwhelmingly positive, but there are a few things that, some prioritization things. The very first email that AMATS sent out, unfortunate mistake that I just copy and pasted, was listing Craig's email address was misspelled. And so when they were submitted, they never got in front of anyone, so.
I'd just like to add on that I had the same issue.
So, what would this do to the process if I mean, 'cause we can't just blank, even though we have testimony that they're all positive, or most of them are positive comments, we can't just willy-nilly prove something we haven't seen, obviously. And so this was copied and pasted, so it wasn't your error, it was our error.
All right, and I'll take some responsibility. I've emailed Craig a bunch of times. I should have it memorized, but it was listed in the first solicitation.
So, what will this do to the process if we have to wait a month here?
Well, the situation is, these are, again, it has to be done every 4 years, and the start of the federal fiscal year is October 1st of 2018. So that's when the old tip dies and the new tip starts. So the ramifications are, if you have projects that are in the old tip and they're underway, they can keep getting funded, so keep continuing your pace, but you can't start any new phases of projects that are in that tip. And then with the new tip, I think I pointed this out before, but we have, I think there's one grandfathered project in here, the O'Malley Road, and everything else is new. So O'Malley Road could continue, as it were, but you can't start any new phases of new projects or new phases of old projects until you have an adopted tip. So we're right now looking at an October 23rd public hearing at the Assembly. That's the soonest we can get on there. And then so that would assume that sometime in November we'd be able to approve this. And then with FHWA approval, that's probably looking at December timeframe for approval. So it's a few months of delay as it is right now. This would add.
We need to resend Does that sound reasonable?
Can I have one nuance to that?
Sure.
Just from a procedure standpoint, I think rather than accepting comments here, because if there are other entities that tried and failed and who aren't in this room, just to be fair, guys, we're glad you brought them today to hand out, but maybe what the step is to just reopen, I guess, whatever the correct term is, correct, reopen the comment period, do another mailing that says what Dave suggested, and have everyone use that vehicle to again submit them so that we're not taking some comments today, just inserting them, and then throwing the door open for people to do other comments.
But they may affect each other too, so.
I don't know, is that a better way to proceed in your mind? Anybody? Greg? Dave?
Was I supposed to be listening to you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, I think this is, I guess I would hate to have, I mean, and we're gonna offer a big apology if we end up doing this. Because I think it's unfair if someone else comes to the next meeting and didn't hear or participate in what we discussed this time, they had comments. That doesn't seem fair. John?
No, I agree with that. On the other hand, with this process to have an official tip that is accepted by the feds, does it have to be approved by the policy committee and also the assembly, or is it policy committee is recommending to the assembly?
No, the assembly reviews and recommends the policy. The assembly does not approve it.
Okay, this is the deciding body.
Yeah, this is the deciding body.
Because I was saying alternative is when it comes to the assembly, you guys make the fit, and we could modify it, which could happen.
Yeah.
That's not real.
And I will say that, I mean, that was one email that went out. There were several different ones that went out, and you can see we got almost 100 comments. So there was a correct email that went out at one point. I blame the mayor personally and my public involvement personally, so it was left up to me to type things in.
Okay, so let's, okay, Rick.
I blew it.
So I guess what I'm not sure if Cindy would probably kick me under the table right now, but I guess what I would propose here is that we ask for comments from the public right now on what we're proposing to do here, and if anybody has any real heartburn with that. So just to reiterate, what we're proposing to do here is to postpone this discussion here, resend out the email, the correct email address to everybody that went to before, and then go through anything we get and incorporate those comments into what we have here. We will reformat it in the same format we have here with the green, the yellow, and the blue. We may add red, who knows? And then we will reschedule this meeting for as soon as we possibly can. Is that what we're?
That sounds good, but how long would we reopen the public hearing, public comment period? Normally it's 30 days, so we've already done that. Can we do it for a week? Because it's really, for 2 weeks, it's extended it.
Are there rules against doing it that way, Greg?
Well, we say that if we're doing a public comment period for comments or NTP comments, we do it for 30 days.
But we're essentially extending it here. That was done, we did 30-something.
I mean,
Well, yeah,
assuming.
and again, it has been open.
Well, I guess what we're dealing with here is if some comments are out there in the internet somewhere in one of those pipes, and they didn't get to you. So those folks already have had the time to review, so we're not looking for someone additional. They may jump in there, but we're not looking for someone additional. We're just looking for someone we missed.
Yeah.
And maybe there won't be anybody out there, and we'll be doing this all for naught, but I think we do have obviously 2 sets of comments that didn't get to us, so is that, okay, so now I'd like to open it up.
Well,
Hold on.
just looking at a schedule, so your next meeting is October 25th. And if we had, and the technical committee is October 11th. So we need to funnel these, whatever new comments we receive, staff has to have some time to prepare a response. And then we need to run through the TAC. And then it needs to be posted a week prior to your meeting. Now, the TAC can meet regularly on the 11th and then continue it to the 18th or even the 17th. Come in on the 17th, adjudicate the new comments that came in. Then we can post it the day prior, and then that'll give us a week posting in advance. Then we could at least meet in October and do the same release. And I would suggest that we would have a public comment today, 2 weeks, I guess 2 weeks would be October 4th. That would be enough time to, we would have to receive on the 4th and do something on that day to get it. So if you made it for the 3rd, that's 2 weeks, that's a day less than 2 weeks.
Two sets of additional comments that's kind of not very white. I guess what I would suggest is if we can get the two gentlemen who said anything, we can get them the correct email address, send this down, and then if we don't get anything, then I think we can go a little more aggressively on our schedule, because we've already sent it out there. We've captured the two folks who didn't provide the comments. And we can be a little more aggressive on our
I do have the comments from Mr. St. So I did get his.
Okay.
I can't remember if you brought them, but he also sent them to me.
Okay.
Along with a petition for, earlier. We just don't have, of the people who are in the room.
Let's get the bike anchor, and let's put out the notice today, 2 weeks, and if we don't get anything, then we've already sent it to didn't get turned into us.
2 weeks is.
That would be great. It's amazing that we need to post something on the fourth, where we require. So we need a little bit of time for everyone, give our thoughts and confer with DOT and project managers on where those comments.
30th, that gives you 3 days to prep the packet for the board. Does that?
So we have a plan. Are there any comments from the public on any of this?
This is the green section.
No, this is any comments at all that we get, because we mess up with email, and so we don't know what the comments are. Yeah.
I would,
One second. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment. Jake Stange, Spinard Community Council. I was here at the Technical Advisory Committee meeting the week previous, and learned at that time that I had inadvertently used the wrong email address to send my comments to Craig. At the time, I had CC'd my comments to the mayor's office, to members of the assembly, and I wanted to thank Craig for including my comments in the packet today. Our comments are here, and we have, an additional section of comments which are signatures supporting the Fish Creek Trail to the Ocean project. So Craig has included that in the packet today, and Craig, thank you very much for doing that. But like Mr. Schwab said, we haven't received staff comments on comments, so we'd love to hear that, and I'm open to hearing that today if staff is ready to provide comments on our comments or a recommendation on our comments. That would be fine with me. Thank you.
False and the community council. What wasn't clear to me is you would postpone this meeting until the next scheduled meeting on, I think, the 25th. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
It would seem to me that when everybody's here, everybody's prepared. Isn't there a way that you can proceed with this meeting? Put your comment period open first. Hold off on the final decision for you to hold off on the final. Go ahead and run your process, and then hopefully, a month from now, this will be a rather small, it won't be much need. It's unlikely you would get a huge opposition comment. I think it might be I personally think we don't
I personally would like to do this now too, but I guess I'm concerned that we might have folks who, because of a wrong email address, their comments didn't get to us. And so we're gonna be having this discussion without them and without their comments being, that's my concern.
Well, my suggestion was that come a month from now, if you have any additional discussion that's needed, then you can
So can I make an assumption here that the vast majority of people here are talking about the UMass project? Or what, the UMass project?
I'm not the one to answer that, maybe.
I'm just wondering, I
Mr.
mean,
Lyons
I
could.
got a feeling that that's what, and I guess. Certain that. Right. John?
I think if we're going through these comments we have in front of us and we're gonna take a stand on it or vote on some aspect of it, I think we could do that, and then, in a month when we get more comments, we don't revise them, or just make statements on the new comments.
Are we gonna
Because I
take
think
it
it
out?
makes a good point. And, people who may have sent in comments to the wrong address, they're clearly involved and somehow got an email and they're the type that read them and respond. That's who we're addressing that missed it. So those people would know that we haven't made any government today. Whether they may find out today, most of my comments didn't get in.
Sure.
But we resolved that, like we
So
will.
are you suggesting, John, that we have a forum here, but we don't take action? Because that's where I'm kind of.
We could do that, but I think we could take the opportunity to review it, to hear from people, and then kind of in our minds, we're prepared, and then we.
Take the
more
action on the
information
next
in a
So no
month.
action today, just.
No,
That would be.
Okay.
Continue the item on the next month's agenda.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just so you know, CRD and Airport Heights, some of Rogers Park will not be testifying today. We will save it for the day that you take action, because we feel it's important and our testimony is that important. So we want it fresh in your mind, not something you're having to try and remember 30 days from now.
As a procedural thing, if you're going to be adding new stuff to your item to review, it's not really something you carry over. It's something that you would kind of not take action on and then start it all over again.
Right. I
So
guess-
a procedural question then, Aaron or Craig, is technically what we are doing is we are postponing item 5A until the next meeting, but we can subsequently in the item 9 public comment section of the agenda ask for those people who wish to provide comment, who can't make the next meeting to do it then. Is that correct?
I think, well, I would think that the proper procedure today is we have the item open, we can invite as much public comment on any item on the agenda, and you'll just delay action until the following meeting. I would ask that everyone who speaks today, make sure to give us your name before you speak, because we've seen some of you before, but we need to have it down for the record. So if you're going to make a comment, if you're going to present, please let us know who you are and if you're representing somebody, so we can get it on the record.
And I would also ask that we keep it in the same order that I asked to have this put in, so we're not going all over the place with this stuff. So going back to where we were, are there any objections in the community to accepting all the comments that we have here? And then if there's additional comments, next time we will.
You say all, I thought we were waiting.
Well, we're not going to vote on this, but I'm just asking, is there any reason why these aren't written down?
Talking about the green ones?
Yes. Okay. So, now we're into the new comments. which-
Do you want public comment about the agreement right now, or are you waiting till the end for all?
Okay, is there public comment on the green?
You had asked that before, but then you got off on a tangent.
Sorry, go ahead then, if you have comments on green.
Okay, I'm prepared. Mark Butler, North Star Community Council Vice President. Just to let you know that at our last meeting on September 12th, we voted 18-3-0 in favor of the Fireweed Lane project, 3-laning project. We do understand that the west end, this forms the border of North Star Community Council, the entire length of that road, Fireweed. And we do understand that at the west end, it works perfectly well and would add into the wonderful development on Spinard there, but that closer to the highway, there will be less chance for that unless you buy a whole bunch of businesses out to have that, because the capacity is much higher, the usage is much higher at the west end. That's one, and then secondly, by myself and my other Spinard Road rehabilitation, a big supporter of it, I'm hoping that there's an ability to split out the fixing the 30th through 36th Avenue, Spinard Road development from the big mega intersection at Spinard and Minnesota, because clearly that's a highway type project, is being worked on by DOT right now, state DOT. And it's very contentious, but the six blocks up are not, and I've talked to 7 or 8 businesses in the area, and they're very interested in now having a similar development. So I fear that if we keep them tied together, that then we'll have to wait until that decision's made down there, and that could be 5, 10, 20 years again before a couplet, overpass, underpass, whatever decision is made. To me, they're very clearly different features. Thank you.
Right, so the fire meter was on here twice, I believe, and once was a more straightforward thing, and another one is more of a complete streets.
We just, the North Star Community Council dealt with the complete streets. We're very much in favor of that. Yes, we did notice that there's some more renovation, and if they happen soon, you'd be renovating and then tearing it up soon thereafter. It's all time.
Okay, any other public comments on the green section, which are the section of the packet? Move on to the comments.
Yes, Jay Stange, Spinard Community Council. I wanted to echo the comments of my colleague to the north, in the North Star Community Council. We also support the Fireweed Lane Rehabilitation Project. I think it's an excellent use of AMATS funding, and strongly support that. And I also have been hearing a lot from my constituents recently that nobody seems to understand what DOT is really proposing with the 36th Avenue couplet concept. It hasn't been presented to my community council. It hasn't been, we haven't been in contact with Department of Transportation staff. I think a number of years ago, former members at Spinard Community Council had some interactions with DOT regarding this project, but to my knowledge, nobody in my community council, business and residential members, currently support the couplet idea. We are, however, greatly in support of improving Spinard Road from 30th Avenue to 36th Avenue. Another comment quickly on the Fish Creek Trail connection. There was a very productive meeting over the summer between the Alaska Railroad and the City Parks and Rec Department. I want to thank Tim Sullivan and Mr. Lindemood for making an excellent effort to communicate with the city about the public's need for, or the public's desire for a trail from Northern Lights Boulevard to the Twenty Hills Coastal Trail. I think there was a lot of progress made this summer, and I would urge staff to consider bumping design money forward by 1 year in the document here, and considering construction money to be included into the 2022 budget as well for that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Gloria Manni, a West Anchorage resident and the treasurer of the Turnagain Community Council. And I wanted to inform the team that the letter that was sent from our president dated August 20 will be amended, because the letter was sent due to a deadline, but then we had a very good meeting with Perk of Recreation regarding the Fish Creek Trail to the ocean, and we are, myself personally, and the old Turnagain Community Council is very much in support of the project. And I agree with Jay that the sooner you move the design, we move along. We sorely miss the old unofficial trail we used to have. Thank you. So please consider that the draft comment regarding Fish Creek will be amended in full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, so moving on to the items in blue, which I believe are concentrated on the June item. Katie?
I want to hear
Chairman, it appears that all the comments in blue seem to be recommending that we do not move forward with the UMAD. If I read them all correctly. Is that your understanding? Okay, good.
Just to clarify, the comments that we received during the public comment period were, on that project, were all opposed to it. We did have a letter in here towards the back from the chief lands officer of the University of Illinois Cambridge in support of the project. It was received on the 6th
Now we'll be included because we're reviewing.
For some and not the others. Okay, John, you have any comments?
Well, nothing, I'd wait till the next meeting.
Okay.
Again, on the way.
Okay, so public, from the or comments from the public, I asked that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any comments from the public on any of the items in the comments in blue for this particular project? Yes, sir.
My name is Paul Stang, S-T-A-N-G. I'm president of the University Area Community Council. And it's in this area that your proposed road would exist. We're opposed to that road, strongly opposed to it, and have been on the record for a long period of time. In your comments on page 15, in blue is our most recent comments. Included also in the follow-up package that's called correspondence is a resolution we sent to Governor Walker and the UA Board of Regents opposing the road. In a resolution passed back on March 4th, 2015, unanimously opposed to the road. And then there was oral testimony presented on July 21st, 2015, testimony on the Interim 2035 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Again, fully opposed to the road with all the reasons and rationale for it. I don't want to repeat those. I hope you read them. They're important to us. The point I'd like to make now is that the UMed district plan was approved in March 2016 after extensive effort by the community, the institution, and all. A lot of effort put in to make that a viable plan. It has 6 priorities listed. The top priority is University Lake Park Master Plan. The second priority is the Transportation Demand Management Study. Fortunately, we have completed the University Lake Park Master Plan, and we're most pleased that has been completed. So what that means is that the number 1 priority now listed in this book is, in this district plan, is the Transportation Demand Management Study, because the first one has already been completed. So that is the top priority of the collective wisdom of all those participating in the development of this district plan. We hope you would use that as a focus and use the funds in the TIP for that effort. That's what we would prefer, and that's the whole idea of the transportation management plan, to figure out what we're dealing with, what we've got, not just who wants this road or who wants this road, let's vote, but let's do it logically, systematically, as good planning should be done. And then, if need be, vote on a road if you want to, but finish this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John?
Well, I wanted to follow up on that topic. Maybe it should wait.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Any other comments from the public?
I have
Yes.
a comment, actually, for maybe hopeful future clarification. My name is Paige Coatney. COATNEY. And at the tech advisory meeting last week, after public testimony had been closed, AMATS Tech stated that the UMed Road project would not be removed from the TIP because it had scored high enough to be included. However, the scoring table which showed how each project scored against criteria was not released for public comment in mid-July. And on August 20th, Dave Evans submitted a written public comment requesting this information be made available, and the comment period extended to assess that new to the public information. The scoring table was finally made available 2 days before the TAC last week. There wasn't enough time to digest all the scoring information in order to make a substantive comment. So in addition, there was no explanation on how or why aspects were scored the way they were. So some discrepancies I found in the categories where they were given points. For example, category 1 on safety, it was given a 0.4. I did Math 7 Ways to Sunday and could not come up with that score based on the criteria. So now that we have a month, maybe prior to 2 days before the next hearing, we can get an explanation about why this math in the majority of these categories don't match up to the criteria list that was provided. Is there a documentation stating how these numbers came to be based on this criteria? Because the math doesn't count out.
Can I answer that now?
Please.
So Aaron can probably illuminate this a little bit, but what we first posted, when we posted all the rest of the scores, was the aggregate scores of all the projects, not separate out by criteria, but just this one got a 30-day total of all the criteria. What we did after that was show all the criteria then. But we don't just have one person ranking and scoring. I think we had 5 or 6 this time. So all of those scores together are added together. So if I gave a project a 6 and someone else gave it a 2, we come to an average of a 4, I guess. I don't do that, that's not my thing. But that's why I have spreadsheets, and that's why I work with people who are smarter than I am. But all of those scores together get added together and shown that. Once that occurs, what we do is we look at the projects, and if the number one project is, for example, something related to the highway, which is $200 million, well, obviously we're not going to fund that in here. So then we go to the next one, and we just continue on until something makes sense to be in this program. Again, I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of how those numbers work out. You've got a bunch of numbers in there, and you've got several people scoring with different scores, and don't know, do you have anything to add, Aaron?
No, I think that's
it.
So I guess in summary, I think that the answer is this is a subjective process. There's not a formula that you can go to and put in a number and get something out at the other end. This is a group of people, from what I understand, looking at this going, and I'm sure if you took 5 of us up here and asked us to score how well this building functions or whatever, we would come up with probably 5 different scores. So I don't think you're going to find a formula that says, okay, you put in this, and this is what you get out here. This is 5 different people giving their opinion of how safe this particular project is or whatever attributes that project has. So it's humans doing this. So you're not going to, your score, it doesn't surprise me that you have something different. That would make sense to me. So I don't think we have the ability to say, okay, you put in this and this is what you're going to get out the other end, because these are human beings who are doing this stuff. Yes, sir.
So who are the people doing the scoring then?
The people that are doing the scoring are, we have a couple people from the Transportation Planning Division, someone from Public Works over in the municipality, a couple people over from DOT and their planning and their pre-environmental or pre-design engineering group over there. So there are a number of different folks doing it.
That might be good to, for transparency, to publish that list of who analyzed that, so people that are bearing the results of this get to know who is scoring. On this group, or when you vote, you have a public vote and you say, each of you are on the record for voting, and the same with the assembly and most other bodies.
I
guess I mean, I'm happy to do that, but I don't know what the value of me sitting and arguing why I gave it a 4 and someone else gave it a 6. I mean, as Mr. Kemp said, that to some degree it's subjective. There are some criteria that are in there that basically talk about, you know, is the creature that you're building, is it a collector or is it a material? And he gets a certain score based on that. Well, that's hard and fast. There can't be any argument on whether a creature is a facility is a collector versus a local street. But on my version of the truth of, does this project increase economic vitality? I may give it an 8. You may look at that and say, no, that's more closer to a 6. But I don't, you know, getting into that minutia, I mean, at some point we have to have humans doing this actual work. And humans are going to disagree, and humans are going to make mistakes. Clearly, I made a mistake with the email address, but we're going to do that sort of thing. But we're going to, I hope people have faith that I have no interest in any particular road project in this city more than any other one. I'm just trying to do the job for this committee to help figure out how to spend these federal dollars, just like Aaron is, just like Vivian is, just like all of the folks that work on this are trying to do. I don't have vested interest. I don't own land in the university area that's going to benefit by Northern Access or lose by Northern Access.
Yeah, I did not suggest arguing over individual scores, but rather just to state who the people are so we understand the process better. You were confused about it, apparently. I was also. I did not understand that, so to let the public know what the process is more fully, I think makes a lot of sense.
And I
I was
believe,
just going to offer a quick comment, Mr. Butler. Thank you for your observations. I think they're spot on, and there's certainly no reason to not provide transparent information about the process through and through. I will add that, as Mr. Lyon was describing, it's made up of a collection of professional engineers, public works folks, traffic engineers, et cetera. So each of them bring that, not only the skill sets, but their own perspectives to the table. And so that's one other thing to remember, is that what scores highly for a traffic engineer may not score highly for a regular citizen, and vice versa. So there's always going to be some nuance in the numbers, influenced by the professional qualifications of the reviewers, probably more so than, say, personalities. But there certainly is nothing wrong with an open and transparent process that gives the public information that it needs, and I think we can take that to heart.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thanks. Just,
Can you identify yourself?
Cheryl Richardson.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's my understanding that after September of 2018, AMATS will embark on re-examining its project ranking criteria. Some of us have been studying how other communities are doing it and how those communities are closer to implementing their comprehensive plan with their ranking criteria rather than focusing so much on moving traffic. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Just for clarification, when we adopt this tip, after we adopt this tip, then we will start the process. It is not going to be September, because clearly, as you know,
Behind schedule.
we're a little bit behind schedule. So when we get this done and wrapped up, then we will start that process, probably a more than a year-long process of tweaking our criteria.
Thanks, Greg. Any other comments from the public on the items in blue on this presentation, which is the UMAC project? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something that there was some discussion that if those funds were shifted from construction or whatever they are to just the transportation and management study, I think we could do that. But then there were some comments that if it said no build, then we have to repay that if we flesh that out.
I'm not an expert on the NEPA process. I'm looking at Mr. Dunn on the technical advisory committee. And my understanding is if you're just doing a study by itself, I mean, that's a finite project. And once the study is done, you look at the results of that and decide whatever you want to do with it. You could recommend doing some kind of road project. It may talk about, in terms of the demand management, it may talk about increasing transit or putting bike lanes or something like that in there. If it's a standalone study, there's no reimbursement. If you do a TDM as part of a road project, and the TDM comes out and says build X facility, and then you don't build it, if you're doing it as part of a full road construction project and you don't construct anything, but the recommendation in there, the environmental document says build something, then you have the possibility of paying something back. Is that slightly close to the truth, Wolfgang?
Sure.
Okay.
So is that a recommendation that if we were to say, oh, we should do a TDM for the UMAT, that should be an added project instead?
I mean, what I took away from the technical advisory committee, and I haven't double checked the minutes again, but what I took away was it's possible that we would do a TDM in that northern access study, and we didn't add a separate TDM standalone project right now. Policy committee can certainly make that move.
But if we don't, then we might end up in a situation where something isn't built, maybe because the TDM says don't, and we have to repay something. That'd be correct.
Planning and reconnaissance studies are just result in recommendations. If you move that forward into the NEPA process and come up with a build action as the recommended alternative, and you choose not to build, then you could be liable to repay those funds back to the transportation trust.
Okay, so if we explicitly say a TDM should be done as step one for this UMed thing, and it's in with other construction steps, we're probably okay. If TDM study says don't build, then we're done.
It's a planning study, that's all.
Okay, any other comments from the public on the items in blue? Okay, let's go ahead and move then to the items in yellow. And unless someone on the committee has an objection to it, what I'd like to do is to roll through these and just kind of remind folks what the recommendation is from the Technical Advisory Committee on this. So number 5 on page 18 is a recommendation to remove this project from the text. And the project is
It's 0004, Academy Drive, Vanguard Drive.
It doesn't have it in there, but we should have it in there.
I just copied it.
Okay, so that one is, TAC recommended removing that from the tip. The next one is the Lakeville Drive. Again, staff concurred with recommending this be removed. The North Fork of the South Branch of Chester Creek, that's the 10th Avenue pathway, which crosses that. They again recommended to remove that one. Update of the Port of Alaska modernization project, recommended to update that one. Number 12, in the railroad, Ocean Dock ramp intersection, recommended adding a study for that one. And then on page 19, in the railroad, 92nd Avenue extension, recommended a study be done on that one. The next one is
It's about the Gateway Master Plan. It was a project that was nominated. It did not. It scored fairly well, but the question at the time was, which is the case often now, for planning projects, just like a construction project, there's a required match, a local match. And the construction projects, it's fairly easy to come up with the match dollars because you can either bond for it as a municipal project or the state has some funds to use. But for planning projects, it's challenging to come up with a match. So staff originally recommended not to include this because of the challenge in coming up with a match. The planning department decided and suggested that this was a big enough priority for them, maybe we want to figure out how to come up with a match through a combination of dollars and through in-kind match. So staff then recommended that.
okay, so this is a study that they recommend adding into the draft.
That's correct.
Okay. And then number 39 and 63 are updates. And these are things that staff will, so number 39, or number 53 is the Connect Farm Crossing project.
So in the public review draft, when we sent it out, we had updated the tables that were part of the AMATS allocation the roads, the trails, the transit sort of things. But we had not gotten the information back from the railroad and the Port of Anchorage and, et cetera. And so the projects that appeared in the public review draft were the same ones that were in the previous tip, which included the Kindergarten Crossing project. And so this is basically when it came to the PAC, we were saying, we're going to update that when we get the new information. We have received that information now, so
we can,
it's just, yeah.
okay. And then number 39,
This is the project that transit, transit agreements. We just wanted them to update the information that was in there to make sure that
I guess I would ask in the future that you have the project names on these. I realize that people maybe didn't put them in their comments, so it's kind of challenging to figure out what we're talking about just sometimes when we don't have the project name.
Mr. Chair, real quick, as a footnote for future exercises, it might be, and I don't know if this was provided already, Craig, but for members of the public looking to comment, it might be helpful if we provide some boilerplate suggestions on how those comments should look, i.e. please include a reference to the TIP need ID number or the project name, so that it's easier to follow. Just a recommendation.
Okay, so number 75, this one scored low, and the recommendation I believe was to building.
So the next two projects, or the next two comments were on, one was a kind of a joint bullet comment on pedestrian trail projects, and one was on bicycle trail projects. And the request was, there's several projects that are in those two plans, we'd like to move them up and have them included in the TIP. And those projects were not either in the short term of the MTP or they were not nominated. So staff did not score them because we hadn't seen them before. We did take the opportunity to go ahead and score them. And compared to the rest of the non-railroad projects, they scored well. Even after they weren't originally scored because they weren't nominated from the short range of the MTP. We did go ahead and score them anyway, and they just scored very well. So we didn't recommend they get included after taking the time to go ahead and score them.
Okay, so that's number 75 and number 76.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 88, staff concurs with this.
The general idea of this comment is that we're in the process of updating our MTP right now. And the suggestion was, why don't we wait till the MTP is finalized, and then we can do a new TIP. But as, the challenge is always to get those schedules to line up. If we wait until the MTP is finalized next fall, September of 2019, we have almost an entire year of not being able to do any projects. It just doesn't, I don't think people would think that makes sense to do, and we certainly don't think it makes sense to do. The schedules just don't often line up, so we're in the process of updating that TIP. We have needs in this city that we would like to act on instead of waiting for another year before we go. So that's the gist of the comment, and that's why we responded in that manner.
Okay. And then 94 is basically an error which staff agrees they will correct. Okay, so does anyone from the public have any comments about anything that's in yellow on the Excel spreadsheet, the draft tip comments and responses? Yes, sir.
Jay Stange, Superior Community Council, thank you again for the opportunity to comment. I really appreciate it. The items in yellow that were added by staff, I think are high priority projects that I'm really glad to see included. I'd like to just make a quick comment about the Chugiach Road, the Chugiach Way, and there's been a number of different stakeholders that have been in conversation with our community council and with the mayor's office and other members of the AMATS staff at different points along the way through the Spenard corridor process. And we're in the Spenard are highly supportive of AMATS involvement, which initially started with a $250,000 study grant. And we would like to see the Spenard corridor plan released for a public review soon. It's been, it originally started out as some work that was done by Fee Tobish and Joni Wilm through AMATS, they did a fantastic job on the public scoping and created a document that I feel like really responded well to many of the diverse needs in our community, both residential and commercial. And it was a fantastic product. I think that at the tail end of that project, it was realized that there were a couple of key developments that Mr. Schutte has worked hard to realize in that area, and that there are some overarching zoning and development questions that we'd like to include. So I think that's a really important project for AMATS to consider funding. And I'd also like to step up and say that the 36th Avenue to Iowa Street sidewalk project that is in item number 76, and I'm sorry, I don't know exactly who Jenny Miner is, but I want to thank her for everything that she's done to bring these projects forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? I'd just like to make a comment here. I read an essay last week about issues with democracy, and one of the big things that they were talking about was the lack of participation in democracy. And I think today here we have exactly the opposite. I really appreciate people, they are passionate and concerned about projects, asking questions about how the process works. It's all really good stuff. And I appreciate everybody showing up here. And I apologize that we're going to need to do this again, but I do appreciate everybody showing up and speaking their piece. So. Okay, so we don't have a motion here. We're going to postpone 5A. We'll deal with that later.
Do you need a vote to postpone? I would like to make that motion.
Please do.
Second.
You good? All those in favor?
I need to extend it to the third, through the end of the third.
30.
That's a Sunday, and that makes sense, right?
Let's just do it on the first.
Okay.
Close business on the first, 5 p.m. That's what we usually do when our comment period's end of the weekend. Just give it some extra time.
Good. Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 5B, the Freight Advisory Committee appointment. Craig.
So, we have a Freight Advisory Committee which has, I think it's 11 members, and those seats are, for the most part, specifically delineated in their bylaws. One of the seats is a seat for the Alaska Railroad. The person that we had in that seat, I'm sure due to job responsibilities, just hasn't been able to attend those quarterly meetings. Mr. Lindeman, who was the chief engineer for the vice president of engineering at the railroad, is a member of our technical advisory committee. They suggested he doesn't spend enough time with us, so he wants to join us for the Freight Advisory Committee meeting as well. There is nothing that is written in the bylaws or the operating agreement that talks about not being able to serve on the AMATS committee. So, the technical advisory committee met in September 15th a week ago and recommended that the unanimously recommended appointment.
Thank you. For the committee? John?
I have gotten to know Brian because he organizes Star Wars X-Wing games Mondays. He is an amazingly fun, diverse guy. I totally put him on there. And I think the Freight Advisory Committee, in my experience, has been a pretty good committee with interesting people. And his work on the TAC he's prepared and knowledgeable. He's super efficient.
He's also an avid bicyclist. You could almost put him on the impact rock. Keep him busy. See how much more he can take.
Are we going to repeat these comments when he comes back? Okay, any other comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Okay, any objections? Seeing none, motion is approved. Any other action items today? Okay, moving on to item 6A, the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. Okay.
Some of you try to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm giving you we're still in the modeling phase for the piece of the project that we brought before you to go ahead and move forward. And Mr. Young and Alan and I are working on the financial plan still, so nothing exciting to report.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to remember, I was in a meeting recently with people from, not AMATS, Big Transit, and they talked about the modeling is being done differently this year, and I'd like to hear about it. I was hearing that instead of coming up, with the level of service and throughput as the goal, that there was a look at the mode split. Can somebody talk about that?
I'm sorry, what would you?
My name is Cheryl Richardson, I'm sorry, I forgot. And again, I understood that there was a slightly different approach being taken this year to the modeling, and I hope somebody could talk about that. Again, because there was a look at the mode split as starting off in that direction instead of LOS.
Thank you.
Through the chair, yes. We're doing something new that we've never done before. We've asked the consultant to please do a model run. And what we have is we just took 5% of all trips away from everything that's non-SOV, non-SOV, single occupant vehicle trips, just to see what 5% would look like. 5% was what we agreed on just as a team, just because that's where you can start to see changes. You can see some benefits. 5% increasing transit to 5%. It's not just transit; it's all non-SOV trips. So bicycle trips would go up, transit and pedestrian trips would go up. So that's just something that the team decided we wanted to do. We'll be bringing that information to you, and it helps us with looking at the two scenarios that we've been looking at. We're limited by budget on how much that we can actually effectually change for transit. We can't do that. It's going to have to be by making policy that are more in line with the land use plan. The transit system has the capability now of doubling their capacity just with the capital assets they have right now. What's going to make a difference is if we change policies. So rather than just doing straight line projects, we're trying to quantify what it would look like if we could raise transit. And actually, we've never done that before. So that's kind of just something new that the team wanted to see, to have that conversation with you all.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay. All right. Item 6B, the C Street Ocean Dock Road Study Update. Okay.
We're going to do a presentation here. Jeannie Bowie will, engineering, if I can get it.
My name's Jeannie Bowie.
Is there a rock?
Jeannie Bowie with Key Engineering. I'm presenting on a project that we're just finishing up. I'm the project manager for Key Engineering, and Edith McKee is the project manager for DOT. So the study, it was a reconnaissance study, and basically the purpose of a reconnaissance study is to find out what's going on, what kind of issues there are, what problems are we having in an area, and then to identify possible solutions and analyze those solutions and then compare them. The reconnaissance study isn't really necessarily supposed to come up with a recommendation and final plan. So the study area is near the port. When you're going on north on C Street and you go down the C Street ramps, you get to the port. The study area is basically the ramps and then this intersection of Ocean Dock Road and the C Street ramps. And the study came about because the Freight Advisory Committee was very concerned about pavement deterioration that happens on the ramps kind of on a yearly basis and needs to be repaired every year. So they asked that it be looked at, and that's a reconnaissance study. We looked at what other kinds of issues there are. So we identified that drainage is causing these pavement problems. We also, when we talked to the truckers who use the ramps, there's so this is Government Hill directly to the north intersection, and there's like a retaining wall and a big hill here that blocks your sight as you're coming around the corner. And they talked about difficulties with when the trains are on the tracks that they don't feel like they have enough time to see ahead, or there's also a left lane up here, sometimes trucks turn left onto this side street and block traffic. And so those, they talked about sight distance issues. And then there's the railroad crossings themselves. There's 2 railroad crossings, which means if you're on a bike, that your tires can get caught in the crossing. And then also, if you're a tour bus or operating a hazardous freight where you have to stop at the tracks and look, it can be hard to look and see if the train is coming. And then just the crossings themselves add a lot of delay. The trains take a lot of time at these crossings, and so cars are held up for quite a while trying to get to and from the port. And then also, the trains themselves sometimes say, hey, we've held up people for 15 minutes now, and maybe we better pull off the road and stop doing this work that we're doing. And they get out of the way so people can go and then get back on the road. So that interaction is a lot of delay. And then also, in addition to all of the kind of freight and port activities that are going on in this area, there's a lot of recreational activities. There's residential to the north, Government Hill. People want to be able to get downtown, and the main path to downtown is a sidewalk here that crosses the 2 ramps at crossings, and then there's a sidewalk on the bridge, on C Street Bridge, that goes straight into downtown. Where people also want to hit Fish Creek Trail, which kind of this bridge goes right over, so people would like to travel along here to Fish Creek Trail. There's also fishing up to the left here that people want to travel to, pedestrians want to get to. And then bicyclists we identified are frequently uncomfortable on this pathway and would prefer to bike down here to get to Government Hill and J-Bear through this route. So those are the issues that we identified. So there are a lot of different users of this area. The port, the railroad, J-Bear, fishing, recreational, tourism, there's cruise ships that land at the port and bring the tour buses through, people commuting through the area. So we tried to reach out to these different users in a variety of different ways. We had an online survey that people could take and give us information about how they use the area and their issues. We had an agency field visit and an advisory council meeting, and then we had an open house in November that presented our findings. So we kind of already talked about the concerns. We came up with 4 different alternatives. Well, so the first alternative is not do anything. What happens if we don't do anything? And basically, you still gotta, you've got the pavement damage going on. You could clean out the drainage pipes, and if they're all fine, then maybe that would help it, but still you're gonna be doing this constant pavement repair. So our second alternative was really just addressing the pavement repair, fix the drainage, and there's a couple different quick options you could do. You could put in the railroad warning flasher an advanced railroad warning flasher so that the trucks know there's a train there in advance. You could do a little bit of improvements to the pedestrian pathway that's already there. But this primarily focuses on the drainage. Alternative 3 addresses a lot more things. It's a lot bigger. So it pushes the retaining wall to the north to give a little more room for the road and the intersection, and the median would allow you to put a pedestrian walkway down to the intersection. People could cross here and have a median refuge. and then they would connect to the existing shoulder. It would put a left turn here from this side street that would allow trucks that are turning left to get out of the way of trucks going in and out of the port. It would fix the drainage just like the other one did. And if we put in this left turn, it would require more track signing, or more controls of people crossing the tracks. So that's alternative 3. And then alternative 4 is a little bit undefined. The idea is to look at how the tracks and the road are interacting with each other. This was kind of our concept of how that would work. At the TAC meeting last week, Brian Lindemood talked about actually swapping the road with this track, switching positions. So it's that kind of thing that would, in addition to fixing the drainage and giving the pedestrians a route, would also eliminate some of the railroad track crossings. We did a comparison of the 4 alternatives, and basically, like I've said, alternative 2 fixes the drainage, but not much else. 3 fixes pretty much everything except for the track crossing problem, and 4 could potentially do everything altogether. So what's happening now? Our contract is complete now. The study is done. The alternative 3 was scored and put it's in the draft tip that's before you right now. And at the TAC meeting, Brian Lindemood asked for the study of the area to be completed, and that's essentially moving forward on alternative 4. So that's what I've got.
Questions from the committee? Questions from the public?
Is it possible to go back and show us 3 and 4 again?
So here's 3.
And do you have a cost with it?
There are costs with it. I don't.
Okay.
5 million for number 3 and about 10 million for number 4.
Okay.
So that's cool.
I'll just chime in that when I was a young mother taking my bicycle from downtown to Government Hill, we used to go on grade and then up the back road. And then the safety issues closed that road. And I certainly quit riding my bike over there. It was just terribly painful to fight semis on a bicycle.
And I think that's
a
lot of people's experience.
Thank heavens for the cruise ship passengers, they might make it whole again. Is there the ramps themselves, what is the life, another 50 years? I don't know, whoever designed those ramps is not my favorite person. What is the life span?
Of the ramps?
Yeah, the vehicle ramps.
I guess I don't know.
Anybody know?
Typically, they're 20-year design.
And these have been much longer than that, haven't they? Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the public? Sorry? Go ahead, John.
So is the goal here to be able to get trucks in and out quickly? Is it just safety?
That I think it's more resiliency. So there's congestion. Well, if you move the tracks, if you were able to separate the tracks from the cars, you would solve a lot of congestion problem. And that's really the only true congestion problem that there is. And there's not a safety history. There's not a lot of crashes going on. They're professional drivers and they're doing their best, but they feel like there are a lot of conflicts. And so, it's hard to quantify, but yeah, the idea is resiliency to help make that flow smoother. The port is obviously an important thing to connect our.
No, I understand. You have 0, 5 million, 10 million. For $10 million, do you get traffic flows super fast and there's big savings in time, or are they all really pretty much about the same?
I haven't quantified that track crossing delay. You wouldn't have a higher speed facility. Like you wouldn't have, it's at 35 now, you wouldn't make it 55 miles an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, a couple questions. Is this something that could be completed in one construction season? And two, during the construction phase, how does that affect the flow of traffic in your area?
Okay, those are really good questions. I think this alternative for changing the tracks is actually quite a bit. It will take a lot of time to plan. I think it's a lot of, that's my opinion, a lot of interaction between railroad and the port and the DOT to figure out what makes sense. I don't know if alternative 3 is a 1 year. I'm not an expert in construction. I do studies.
Doesn't look like a 1 year Z, especially if you're moving on 4 of your terms, or if you're moving tracks, definitely. It just doesn't look like a 1 year either.
Yeah, obviously we have to keep traffic moving in and out of the port at the same time, and that would be a challenge. I think also noise to Government Hill would be a challenge.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Got one more presentation for.
Oh, one more. One more, yeah.
Try to go back.
Okay.
Sure.
Agenda item 6C, Human Service Coordinator Transportation Plan Update. Craig?
Or better, Tanya.
All right. Hello. Hi. Policy Committee. My name's Tanya, and I have members of the public, other people in the room. My name's Tanya, and I work for Agnew-Beck Consulting, and we are sub-consultants to a firm called GridWorks out of Portland, Oregon, on the Human Services Coordinated Transportation Plan. And our role has been primarily to conduct outreach related to this plan, but I'm going to try and kind of give an update on all of the plan. So just the topics that I would like to discuss, just to give a little project background, talk to you about the outreach that we've done, and give you a sense of the direction that the plan is headed. And this is all because we will be in front of the policy committee, hopefully in December, asking you to approve this plan after we've also, presented to the technical advisory committee. So this is a little bit of a precursor, prelude to what you will hopefully approve in 2 months. So coordinated human service transportation plans are really focused on individuals with disabilities, seniors, and low-income individuals. They're really about kind of trying to support the needs of people who have limited mobility options, limited transportation options for getting around town. So they recommend strategies to meet the needs of those people, and they prioritize. And they're also required, if you want to access a certain pot of money, the 5310, which is part of federal transit law, and it's related to enhanced mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. So the city has to do this plan if they want to get funds to help support this type of planning or projects that support folks. The outreach that we've conducted, we essentially kicked off this plan in 2018. At that time, in March of 2018, at that time we met with a group of city leaders to kind of talk about the focus of the plan and let them know that it's going to be a tool that they can use to implement. We had a transportation provider meeting where we met with different organizations that provide transportation services to seniors and individuals with disabilities and low-income individuals. That included, the public bus system, Anchor Rides, but also private folks who work for different assisted living facilities and senior organizations. We held 2 open houses, and we also have we're this community organization meeting. We kind of have this ad hoc working group of key organizations that represent, that serve individuals with disabilities and seniors and low-income individuals. So, for instance, like the the Office of Disabilities and Special Education under the governor, and the Statewide Independent Living Council and Access Alaska, all these, the Alaska Mental Health Trust, they're serving on that committee. We also did a survey of transportation providers, and then we did kind of some directed outreach. We did a focus group with English language learners, and then we recently did some outreach at the Midtown Job Center to try and talk with job seekers who rely on transportation to get around town to go to job interviews. And we kind of have 4 big themes from the outreach that I think are important for the policy committee to be aware of, but Essentially, that the changes to people mover routes really have impacted the daily life of people with limited travel options. People walking and rolling to destinations really need to be considered in coordinated planning efforts. And there was a lot of energy and excitement around collaboration and having organizations work together to serve the needs of individuals, transportation needs of individuals with disabilities and seniors. And that, we are a winter city. I know we talk about this a lot, but we held our open houses right when there was big snowfall, and it was just like really, people were hitting that hard. That, it's really hard to get to the bus stop when the sidewalks aren't cleared. And then this all was kind of corroborated and supported by many of the outreach events that we did. So we had a really cool focus group that involved 3 interpreters to help 4 Spanish speakers, 3 Arabic speakers, and 1 Korean speaker participate in the focus group. So it was lively and a little confusing, but we got some really great input. And essentially, it was very interesting. Many of the kind of new arrivals to our country are from places where they're really used to public transportation being like a viable option. And so they all said that their preferred way to travel was the bus. And we asked them how they arrived at the meeting that day, and they most said they were driven by a friend. Some took the bus. Very few, no one drove there in their own car. And so anyways, they were just, this is like a whole market of people that the bus could, be better serving. So, and then they kind of reiterated some of the issues that we've heard in many of the other groups, but that, that the bus is too infrequent and that the infrastructure needs improvement. And that it's, you're walking long distances on unsafe roads with no sidewalks to get to bus stops. And that biggest barriers are kind of the lack of service at certain times, night and weekends, so that they can get to jobs and get to activities, and that that the transportation options don't quite get them where they need to go. And then the job seekers, we just met with job seekers last week. So we went to the Midtown Job Center and we talked to folks. And the majority of the people we ended up talking to were adults over the age of 45 with low incomes. And 10 out of 14 said that they'd like to go more places in Anchorage, but they're not able to get there. And many said that transportation has been an issue in their job search in terms of, one person actually said to me, she said, well, if an employer finds out that you use the bus to get around town, then they won't hire you because they're worried you won't show up on time. So that was just, it's one human being, but that's an issue. And then we also surveyed transportation providers, and 20 organizations responded to that survey. And they too, kind of expressed some of the same things we're hearing from the public. Some of the agencies that responded aren't necessarily transportation providers, or they're social service agencies that maybe interact with transportation service providers. So again, this kind of issue that there's not so many options on late night or weekend transportation options, people not getting to where they need to go, and related to coordinating transportation efforts of all these different agencies, funding is a real challenge. But there is interest to work together. So that's exciting. And this is the direction we're headed. So this is the plan that the policy committee will approve. And it is deliberately pretty slim. And the reason being is that the last plan that was done in 2009 had 47 strategies and like 7 big goals and 47 strategies. And it's just a little daunting, and kind of, you wouldn't want to implement it either if you looked at it. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff. So we're trying to keep this one kind of targeted and big picture. And so we have this kind of overall vision that, of course, older adults, people with disabilities, and people with low incomes, they have to have transportation options that allow them to have individual independence, freedom, and opportunity. And really, as I've been working on this plan, I just think it's fundamental to allow all of our citizens to participate in civic and economic life. Transportation is such a barrier to so many people in our town. And so anyways, I urge the policy committee to always be thinking of these populations when you're looking at projects. And how we're going to do that is we're going to work together as a community. We're going to plan and build an inclusive transportation network, and we're going to grow and share funding for human services transportation. And here's kind of just diving a little bit deeper, but I know it's close to the end of your meeting, so we don't have to get too crazy here. But I guess kind of one of our biggest, most important activities that we hope comes out of this plan, that there will be a human services transportation coordinating committee that can kind of help oversee and implement the plan. And many of the organizations we've been working with are interested in this. And it's kind of just more the nuts and bolts of figuring out who would be the right convener of that group and kind of tracker of all the efforts. There's a real need for kind of more transparency with data and analysis and kind of sharing information about transportation networks and working together to kind of improve this partnership. And then there's kind of maybe this low-hanging fruit, which is partnering with Medicaid, because there's a lot of reimbursable transportation services that Medicaid provides. And one really low-hanging fruit is maybe linking Medicaid up with the public transportation system better, because a lot of people are using taxis to get everywhere, and that's very expensive. And if we could better get bus passes to individuals who are going to need Medicaid transportation, they could use the bus in many instances. So that was kind of an interesting thing that came out of this. And so we'll have some, hopefully, steps related to that. So then our second one is really thinking about this inclusive transportation network, and develop a people mover and anchor rides transit investment priorities and service enhancement plan. There's a lot of words to say, kind of really drill down and think about, okay, where are we missing sidewalks to get to our bus stops? And what are some kind of really targeted things we could do to make our public transportation system and anchor ride system better? And good news is I understand that the public transit system is kind of doing some short-range planning, and it'll probably be looking at these type of items. And then kind of thinking broadly about policies that help us as a major city to clear our roads quicker. And then this educational and material development. We kind of heard a lot that there's actually a fair number of options that may be out there, but people just don't know about them. So just kind of doing a better job promoting all the ways that seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income individuals can get around town. And then this is the last one, is really to grow and share funding for transportation or human services transportation. And we hope to approach scarcity with an abundance mindset and identify new ways to leverage limited resources. But so again, when there's new grant opportunities or exciting funding opportunities, that hopefully these organizations that all serve these individuals could work together to be more competitive or bring and leverage funds and bring them to the table. And then this explore maintenance cost sharing, this kind of came up when we talked with the transportation providers. There's a lot of different organizations that have these fleets of vehicles just sitting in their parking lot that they use to, get their patrons around town. But could they kind of all share some maintenance and maybe even share vehicles? But that's challenging because many people get those vehicles funded from very specific pots of money that can't be used for other types of things. So anyways, it's a challenge, but kind of thinking about how maybe these transportation providers could at least share some maintenance costs and share. So that's the direction that it's headed. And here we are, we're briefing the AMATS Policy Committee on September 20th. That is today. And in October, we hope to have a public review draft of the plan available. November, that is a typo. We're not reconvening this working group. We will convene the working group for input on the final draft. And then, hopefully we'll be back here in exactly 2 months on Thursday the 20th to have this plan approved by the PC, not the PAC. Sorry, got some typos. Does anyone have questions?
So, thank you for the presentation. I have one comment. I worked for the city of Austin in the 90s and headed up their ADA program. And one of the things we did, the Texas School for the Blind was located in Austin. So we went out for a full half a day with blindfolded on and walked the different routes. And I learned a lot. One of the things I learned is a sign with 2 posts doesn't really work because you're tapping underneath and you run right into it. Driveways were a real issue because you come to a driveway and you try to start going through the procedure that you used to cross the street. So for me, it was a real learning experience to actually try to navigate the city without using my eyes. And I think it's safe for hearing impaired or whatever. So for policymakers, for anybody, it's a really good thing to put yourself in those situations. One of the issues we have is the decreasing amount of money we have to do things like plow sidewalks. So we may have the infrastructure there, but we have the inability sometimes to plow those sidewalks. That's a shame. I guess is the way I put it. Anyway, Any other questions? John?
I have one comment. Approaching scarcity with an abundance mindset, I think, is what the legislature does, and it's got us in a pickle. But, one thing on that comment about lawyers don't want to hire people who take the bus, I have several. I only take the bus. And my experience is very different, because they'll plan, they'll look at bus gets me there on time. They don't come in 10, 15 minutes early, so they have to hang out, but they're on time. My employees who drive, they want to show up a minute ahead.
Right.
Well, sometimes they miss it. So I've had tremendous, if they take the bus, they'll be on time.
Yeah.
That's what I've had.
Well, and your business is on an excellent bus route as well.
Not if you're in park.
That's true. That's true. Thinking from my own house, it's on a great bus route, but yes.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Are we down to number 9, please? Are we at number 9?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, I have comments. I want to know why East 42nd Avenue between Lake Otis.
We're not there yet.
You said number 9.
No, I said we're not there yet.
Sorry?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
So the clicker.
Sorry, Mary, did you have?
No, I was talking.
Okay, now, comments from the public?
I'm ready.
Sorry.
I'm Barbara Garner. I'm the University Area Community Council Chair for Parks and Recreation. I want to comment on a street right across from here called East 42nd Avenue. Goes from Lake Otis to Florina, and it's a very busy street. The funding for that was taken away when 40th Avenue went through. The idea was, I was on the planning committee for that whole process, so I'm aware of what went on. We thought all the people on 42nd would go over and use 40th. That's not true. They're still using East 42nd. We have a Volker Park project for which we received Rasmussen Foundation funding for our trails, received a land, water, and conservation fund from the federal government. It's going to pay for the whole park, and we expect to finish it all this coming summer. We need 42nd Avenue, which has never been engineered. It's like asphalt on top of dirt, and down below, we've got a lot of stuff going on. My house is on there. My house is built on wonderful gravel, but back part of my garden, it's peat. It's down there. So it's a very mixed neighborhood. That street has gone on. And once upon a time, it was the worst intersection at Volker and 42nd for spring breakup in the city. There were photographs of it in the Anchorage Daily News, and in the Anchorage Times at that time. I've got several things here, but I don't want to take all your time. I'd be glad to talk more about it. But I have a Nest video camera. I get 24-hour vehicles going up and down 42nd Avenue. I can tell the speed they're going by the length of the grade line or the shortness of the grade line. I can tell the ones that are coming into my driveway, the kitty cats in the neighborhood that are stray. I've got more things than you need to know right now from my point of view. So I want to let you know that this is a major project. It's number 1 on the University Area Community Council CIP list and has been there for years. Why is it ignored?
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments from the public? Sorry, John?
So why are people not using 40th?
There's a lot of activity at the intersection of Volker and East 42nd. People coming from Tudor using Volker to go over to 40th. People coming up there. There are medical buildings off in this area. We are bookended with medical buildings. And we also have the University of Alaska's apartments over there. At the end of the workday, a lot of people are coming up 42nd East to Piper. And then they make a right turn to get to Tudor to hit the traffic signal and go on further east. There's a lot of traffic going there that should really not be there. The other reason we've heard people don't want to use the roundabout that is at 40th and Piper. I frankly think it's quite cool. But
In fact, I was on that 40th Avenue design project along with all the rest of the people, Bob Kniefel and everybody else, Dow Engineering. So I need to know, we've got a street that's been ignored ever since the city and the borough combined. They ignored it because it was the boundary line between those two entities. 40th Avenue was the boundary. The borough was on the south side and the city was on the north side. That neighborhood is called the UMed neighborhood. There's a sign over here. When Piper went through, we put up signs saying what it was, slow down, 25 miles an hour. It's pretty much ignored on Piper. And people are, jamming right up against you. And they'll be in lines for 2 blocks back from Tudor Road to 41st, waiting to get out onto Tudor Road. The point is that 42nd did get money in the bond issue last spring to get started on the project. I've had 2 companies actually talk with me over there wanting to know this and that. They also want to know about parking areas for Folker Park, where we want things like that. We've got things happening over there, but the street is ignored.
A couple of comments. One is the story you described. If you just blanked out East 42nd, I could tell you in South Anchorage 10 other streets where people have exactly the same story. We've been ignored, we got problems there, so on. Speeding traffic, country traffic. That's 100 streets in England.
May I interrupt? 42nd was the highest 25-mile-an-hour traffic count in the history during the time when we were really complaining about it, and that's when 40th Avenue project went in. 42nd was the highest count.
So yours is the important one, but it sounds like it was responded to. There was money in a bond, so the process has started then, right?
But it's not to make it, it's just to start thinking about it.
That's a good start.
It's going to be engineered, heavily engineered. That's a lot of money.
So, but it sounds like some of this, is that in the tip or?
But it's not in here.
Wasn't nominated for the-
Where is it?
It's not insured engineer to be.
So the city does projects off
The city creates their own CIP.
this. Okay, so it sounds to me like you're in good shape, actually. You're on the city's list.
But why isn't it listed?
Because we're using city money, which is a lot faster to get done than federal money. So you smile when you get a city project.
This is state money.
The bond is state money.
This is federal money.
The bond
Federal
issue that
money.
passed in
That's
April
city.
was
Bond is city.
city money, but it's not a lot.
He's in good shape. We'll make it happen.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, thank you so much. This meeting of AMATS is closed 3:14.